The proximity alarm echoed through the bridge, shattering the reverent silence that dominated the Starship Resolute. Captain John Miller lifted his gaze from the holographic displays before him, observing the colossal structure materializing through the observation windows. The Galactic Council station hovered in the void like a monument to arrogance, its 12 spiraling towers glowing with contained energy sufficient to pulverize entire moons. 60 years. 60 long years since humanity first detected signs of intelligent life beyond the solar system. 60 years of calculated silence, of meticulous preparation, of patience that burned like embers beneath ashes. And now, finally, they were here. Chief Engineer Sarah Jenkins adjusted the propulsion controls with trembling fingers. The Resolute wasn't exactly a masterpiece of space engineering, at least not in appearance. Its hull plates were deliberately crude. Visible welds crisscrossed the metal like industrial scars, and the fusion thrusters operated with the brutal efficiency of first-generation technology. It was exactly the image they needed to project. Primitive, backward, harmless, the most expensive lie in human history. A tractor beam reached the Resolute with insulting ease, pulling the ship toward one of the external docking ports. Miller watched 3 alien frigates position themselves around them, weaponry charged and shields at maximum. Standard protocol for unknown species, his intelligence officer, Dr. Natasha Romanoff, had informed him. Or more precisely, protocol for potential threats. The aliens didn't know they had already lost this war before it even began. The landing team consisted of 12 carefully selected humans. Miller led, accompanied by Jenkins, Romanoff, and 9 other specialists whose true functions would never appear in official records. Each wore a small golden insignia on their left chest, engraved with a symbol no galactic civilization would recognize: a phoenix rising from the flames. The entrance corridor was designed to intimidate. Columns of pulsating crystal rose 40 feet high, and the floor was made of some translucent material that allowed them to see the void of space below. Guards from at least 6 different species lined the path, their combat exoskeletons gleaming with lethal energy. Miller did not bow as he passed them. None of the humans bowed. This caused the first murmur of surprise. For the past 11,000 years, every species brought before the Council had demonstrated immediate submission. It was basic survival instinct when confronted with absolute power. But humans had learned, throughout their bloody history, that some things were worse than death. The council chamber was even more oppressive. 12 monumental thrones rose in a semicircle, each occupied by a representative of the founding species of the galactic order. The central throne, elevated above the rest, belonged to the Vorkai, the first to discover superluminal travel, and the architects of the system that held 300 civilizations under their control. The Vorkai leader, Executor Prime Genthar, had 4 eyes arranged in pairs around his bulbous head, all focused on the humans, with predatory interest. His voice echoed through the chamber, amplified by technology Miller could barely comprehend. The universal translator installed in Miller's ear converted the alien words. Records indicate you call yourselves humans, from a planet monitored and catalogued 3 millennia ago as unsuitable for civilized integration. Endemic violence, tribal wars, destructive technology applied against your own species. Genthar paused, his eyes blinking in sequence. And yet here you are, in a vessel that our analysis classifies as technology level 2.4. primitive, almost pathetic in its simplicity. One of the other counselors, an insectoid creature called Hive Mind, Cluster 73, clicked its mandibles. Primary question: how did such a backward species manage to develop a functional warp drive? Sarah Jenkins stepped forward, her calm voice cutting the tension like a blade. With patience and necessity. Dead silence. No one interrupted a council member. Certainly no representative of a non-integrated species would dare speak without permission. But Jenkins continued, completely ignoring protocol. You monitored our planet, catalogued our violence, judged us unsuitable, and then you forgot about us. Genthar leaned forward, fascination replacing irritation. Eloquent for a primitive, but irrelevant. You violated Star Law number 1. No species may leave its home system without council authorization. The penalty is clear. Miller finally spoke, his voice carrying decades of military authority. And what would that penalty be, Executor? Genthar's 4 eyes glowed. Immediate annexation. Your planet will be integrated into the Council's economic system. 60% of your natural resources will be allocated to the galactic common good. Your population will provide labor for infrastructure projects in low-priority sectors. In return, you will receive protection and basic survival technology. Dr. Romanov mentally translated slavery with extra steps. Another counselor, an energy entity contained in a containment suit, added, alternative, refusal results in planetary sterilization. Your mother star will receive solar catalyst bombardment. All organic life in your system will be eliminated within 72 hours. It was the standard ultimatum, surrender or die. Simple, efficient, tested on 300 civilizations over 11 millennia. And then John Miller did something no council member expected. He smiled. It wasn't a nervous smile or one of resignation. It was the smile of a predator who could finally drop the disguise. It was the smile of someone who had held a deadly secret for too long and could finally release it. Executor Genthar, Miller said, each word measured with surgical precision. I appreciate the clarity of your options. Surrender or die. It's binary. Simple. Almost elegant in its brutality. He took 2 steps toward the central throne, each movement deliberate. Guards tensed their weapons. But Genthar raised an appendage, curious. But you operate under a false assumption, Miller continued. You assume these are our only options, that we have no choice but to accept your ultimatum. Genthar tilted his head. Clarification. You suggest the existence of a third option? I don't suggest, Miller replied. I guarantee it. For the first time in centuries, the Executor Prime of the Vorkai felt something his species had almost forgotten: uncertainty. Humanity did not send its most advanced ship to the Council. It did not try to impress with technology or displays of force. It sent bait, a Trojan horse made of metal and alien arrogance, and the Council had bitten. Genthar activated a holographic panel, quickly consulting data. Analysis of terrestrial military strength. 73 fragmented nations, 346 active conflict zones in the last 100 years, nuclear arsenals sufficient for self-destruction 15 times over. Classification: autophagic, destined for extinction without intervention. Miller nodded. Accurate analysis. We are violent, divided, dangerous primarily to ourselves. Then accept Council protection, Genthar declared, genuine confusion in his voice. Your planet is on the brink of collapse. We offer order. Dr. Romanov stepped forward, her voice soft but relentless. You offer chains, and we humans have an ancient proverb. We prefer to die on our feet than live on our knees. Absolute silence dominated the chamber. Genthar finally spoke, his voice laden with authority that had broken civilizations. 12 hours. You have 12 hours to reconsider. Return to your ship. Consult your primitive government, and then accept reality. The Council is not challenged. The Council is not refused. Miller gave a minimal bow, more insult than respect. 12 hours. Plenty of time. As the humans were escorted back to the Resolute, none of the aliens noticed the discreet signal Dr. Romanov made with her left hand. 3 taps on the wrist, Delta 9 pattern. The countdown had begun. Aboard the Resolute, as soon as the hatch sealed, Sarah Jenkins rushed to engineering and activated a hidden panel beneath the main console. Her fingers danced over controls that did not exist in the ship's official schematics. Confirming, she said to the empty air. Protocol Lazarus is green. All security keys verified. Awaiting command authorization. Miller entered engineering, removing the golden insignia from his chest. He placed it in a specific receiver. The Phoenix glowed with its own light. Earth, this is Resolute, he transmitted on an encrypted frequency no alien scanner could intercept. Ultimatum received as expected. Council demonstrates exactly the predicted behavior patterns. They believe we are primitive. They believe they are in control. A voice responded from the other side of the galaxy, calm and relentless. Confirmed. Resolute. The Assembly has voted. Unanimity achieved. You have green authorization for Phase 2. May history forgive us for what we are about to do. Miller looked out the observation window, seeing the Council station in all its intimidating glory. 3 centuries of accumulated knowledge, 11 millennia of unchallenged dominance, 300 civilizations under its yoke, and in 12 hours, all of that would change. May they forgive us, he echoed, or may they fear us. Executor Prime Genthar could not sleep. His species had evolved beyond the need for regular rest millennia ago, but occasionally he entered a state of deep meditation to process complex data. Today, however, his neural processing was consumed by a single variable, that smile. Humans should not smile when confronted with extinction. Primitive species bowed, pleaded, occasionally attempted desperate violence. But smile, with genuine confidence, that suggested knowledge they shouldn't possess. He summoned his intelligence advisor, an artificial entity known as Nexus 7, which maintained complete records of all cataloged species. Retrieve all data on Earth. Designation 3792 Delta. Genthar ordered. I want the complete history since the first observation. Nexus 7 projected holograms into the executor's private chamber. First observation, 3,417 standard years ago. Species classified as bipedal hominids, mammals, carbon-based metabolism, primitive society, dominant tribalism, endemic conflict. Proceed to the recent period. The holograms accelerated, showing human evolution in time-lapse. Genthar watched empires rise and fall, technologies emerge, wars devastate entire continents. Critical interval, Nexus 7 highlighted, 120 standard years ago, the species developed nuclear fission. 30 years later, thermonuclear fusion. Arsenal built capable of sterilizing the home planet 12 times. Genthar paused the projection. 12 times? They created the capacity for planetary suicide? Correct. The situation remained in a state of unstable equilibrium for 63 years. Conflict, known as the Cold War. Humanity lived under constant threat of self-annihilation. The executor leaned forward. And what was the result? No full-scale detonation occurred. The species developed complex systems of mutual deterrence, learned to live with apocalypse as normalcy. Something cold touched Genthar's consciousness. The Council's main weapon had always been fear, threatened total destruction, and rational species choose survival. But what if a species had already normalized living under constant existential threat? Show me recent conflict patterns. More holograms appeared, information wars, cyber attacks between nations, silent arms races, and then, 60 years ago, something changed. The 73 fragmented nations began to cooperate. Discreetly. Joint projects emerged under innocent names: climate research, space exploration, scientific cooperation. But the numbers didn't lie. The budgets were too large, the facilities too hidden. Nexus. Analyze planetary energy. Expenditure over the last 60 years. Graphs materialized. The curve was impossible. Earth's energy consumption had quadrupled, but detectable emissions remained stable. The energy was being consumed, but not in ways visible from orbit. Where is the energy going? Genthar asked, though he knew the answer. Unable to determine? Insufficient data. The executor finally understood. The humans hadn't developed a warp drive recently. They had been hiding. 60 years. 60 years, building something in the dark, away from watchful eyes. Meanwhile, on the Resolute, Dr. Natasha Romanoff sat in her private cabin, reviewing what she called the historical file. Was her responsibility to ensure the team never forgot why they were doing this. The first item was an old photograph. Dresden, 1945. A city turned to ashes by incendiary bombing. Then Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the atomic mushroom cloud that defined an era, Vietnam, the killing fields, Rwanda, Srebrenica, Syria. The list was long and bloody, but there were also other images. Humans raising walls against tides, building shelters in radioactive zones, planting forests in deserts, sending probes to the far reaches of the solar system with messages of hope. Humanity was a living paradox, capable of the worst atrocities and the greatest sacrifices. Romanov opened her personal journal, writing, "Today we faced the Council. They see us as violent primitives. They are not wrong, but they also don't understand the lesson we drew from our violence. We will never again be victims of tyranny, whether human or alien." An encrypted message arrived on her terminal. Origin: Earth Integrated Planetary Defense Command. To all Resolute crew, Protocol Lazarus, now in activation sequence. Phase 1 complete. Quantum relays confirmed operational. All dormancy cells report green readiness. The fleet is waking up. Romanoff closed her eyes. 60 years of preparation. 60 years since the first alien probe was detected orbiting Saturn and quickly destroyed before it could transmit updated data about Earth. In that moment, humanity had made a choice. They would not be passive victims in a cruel universe. They would be patient predators. Back in Genthar's chamber, the executor called an emergency council. 7 of the 12 founding members materialized via hologram. Anomalous situation requires collective analysis, Genthar began. Human species demonstrates behavior inconsistent with threat classification. Hive mind cluster. 73 clicked impatiently. Elaboration needed. Humans are technology level 2.4. Minimal threat. Initial observation may be incorrect, Genthar admitted, each word costing his pride. Energy analysis suggests hidden capacity, 60 years of unaccounted activity. A gaseous counselor, representative of the ethereals, rippled with concern. Proposal: send a deep reconnaissance probe to the Earth system. Verify hidden installations. Insufficient time, Genthar countered. 12-hour deadline was established. Retreating now demonstrates weakness. The oldest counselor, a sentient tree of the arboreals called Elder Root, spoke with a voice that echoed centuries. Genthar commits a classic error. He sees strength in inflexibility. True strength is adaptation. If humans are a hidden threat, better to discover it before military commitment. But Genthar had built his reputation on never backing down. Final decision: pacification fleet will be mobilized, 300 warships in standard eradication formation. If humans do not surrender in 12 hours, Earth will be made an example. The other counselors exchanged worried glances, but did not challenge him. The council operated on a rigid hierarchy, and Genthar had earned his post through 11,000 years of successful subjugation. As the meeting dissolved, Elder Root sent a private communication to Nexus 7. Record dissent. Believe the executor commits a fatal error. Human behavior patterns do not correspond to a primitive species. They are hiding something. On the Resolute, the clock ticked down to 9 hours until the deadline. Sarah Jenkins checked the long-range communication systems for the 20th time. What appeared to be a standard communication antenna was, in fact, a quantum transmitter capable of sending instantaneous signals across the galaxy. "Engineering to command," she called. "Quantum synchronization confirmed, 0 latency with Earth, all secondary nodes responding." Miller entered the communications room. Status of the Lazarus network? Jenkins pulled up a 3-dimensional hologram. Red light points spread across space within a 50-light-year radius of Earth. 147 relays, 82 hidden shipyards, 23 camouflaged missile bases, 9 complete, fleets in hibernation state. Each red point represented years of silent work. Asteroids excavated and turned into fortresses, moons mined and converted into shipyards, comets redirected and equipped with weapon systems that would make supernovas look like fireworks. Estimated crew? Miller asked. 460,000 military personnel in cryosleep, 100,000 technicians in rotation, 2 million autonomous combat drones on standby. Miller observed the map in silence. Each red light was a deadly secret. Each installation, a silent promise. Never again genocide. Never again holocausts. Never again cosmic Hiroshimas. And the Council detected nothing? Jenkins smiled humorlessly. They detected activity, classified it as primitive colonial expansion, subsistence mining. Our engineers designed every installation to look exactly as incompetent as they expected us to be. It was brutal genius, using the enemy's arrogance as the perfect camouflage. An alert sounded on the console. Incoming message from Earth Command. Maximum priority. The holograph of an elderly woman materialized. Gray hair, eyes sharp as blades, a posture that radiated absolute authority. Ambassador Margaret Walsh, leader of the human diplomatic delegation. Former peace negotiator, former military officer, former history professor. Now, the voice of humanity. "Captain Miller," she said, each word heavy as a neutron star. I have just received authorization from the Unified Assembly. I am en route to the Council Station. ETA, 7 hours. You have completed the first phase magnificently. Now I conclude the second. Miller saluted. Ambassador, they are mobilizing a war fleet. 300 ships. Intention to make an example of us. Walsh smiled, and in that smile was the entire bloody history of humanity. Perfect. Let them come. Let them feel powerful. And then, Captain, we will show the Council what happens when they underestimate a species that learned to survive its own apocalypse. Okay, transmission ended. Miller looked at Jenkins, who was already running final calculations. How long until full activation? He asked. Lazarus can go from dormancy to operational in 90 seconds, but we need the final authorization code. Miller nodded. The final code could only come from one person, and that person was now traveling at superluminal speed toward the heart of the empire that governed 300 civilizations. In the depths of the Council Station, Genthar watched his fleet gather. 300 warships, each capable of vitrifying an entire continent. It was enough force to subdue 10 planets simultaneously. Against a primitive species, it would be a massacre. He did not realize he was making the same mistake human generals had made countless times throughout history, confusing inferior technology with tactical incompetence. Humans had lost battles against technologically superior opponents for centuries. And then they learned, adapted, won. Because in the end, wars are not won by weaponry alone. They are won by will. And human will was forged in furnaces of conflict that would make aged galactic civilizations crumble. The clock continued its countdown. 6 hours until the deadline. 6 hours until the Council discovered they had awakened not a primitive species, but a sleeping nightmare. Ambassador Walsh's ship was not imposing. In fact, it looked even more modest than the Resolute, a standard diplomatic transport, almost antiquated in its design. Genthar observed its approach with calculated disinterest. 2 hours until the deadline. Clearly, the humans were sending someone to negotiate surrender. Walsh was escorted to the Council chamber with minimal protocol. She walked slowly, leaning on a decorative cane, each step measured and deliberate. To alien eyes, she was just an elderly female of a weak species, coming to beg for mercy. They did not know that Margaret Walsh had negotiated 17 peace treaties in impossible war zones, that she had looked into the eyes of dictators and terrorists and never blinked first, that her hair had turned white, not from age, but from sleepless nights carrying the weight of billions of lives. She stopped before Genthar's throne and did not bow. "Executor Prime," she said, voice soft but firm. "I thank you for receiving me on such short notice." Genthar leaned forward. "Ambassador Walsh, profile analysis suggests you are considered a skilled negotiator in your species. Have you come to accept the terms of annexation?" Walsh smiled, and it was the same smile Miller had given. "I have come to offer alternative terms." A murmur ran through the councillors. Hive mind cluster. 73 clicked irritably. Primitive species does not offer terms. Primitive species accepts or perishes. "I understand your perspective," Walsh replied, walking slowly in a semicircle before the thrones. 11,000 years of unchallenged domination must create a certain fixed perspective. But allow me to present facts you may be unaware of. She activated a small holographic projector. Images of Earth appeared, not of a peaceful planet, but of a world in constant conflict. "My species has a documented history of approximately 12,000 years of civilization. In that period, we have recorded over 15,000 significant armed conflicts. On average, we have been at war with each other for 93% of our recorded existence. Elder Root, the sentient tree, swayed worriedly. This confirms the classification of an autophagic species, destined for self-destruction. It would confirm it, Walsh agreed, except for one crucial detail. We are still here. We have not only survived, we have thrived. Each war has made us more resilient, each conflict more adaptable, each near extinction more determined. She changed the image. An atomic mushroom cloud expanding over a city. 80 years ago, we developed the capacity for complete self-annihilation. Theoretically, we should have destroyed ourselves within decades, but it didn't happen. Do you know why? Absolute silence. Because we learned something that you, in 11,000 years of forced peace, have forgotten. How to live with constant existential fear and still choose cooperative survival. Jenthar rose from the throne, his four eyes focused intensely on Walsh. Eloquent words, but irrelevant. Our fleet is ready. 300 ships against your unprotected planet. The math is clear. Walsh leaned on her cane, suddenly appearing frail. I must confess something, Executor. This cane is not necessary. My legs work perfectly. She lifted it, and with a sudden movement, activated a hidden mechanism. A three-dimensional hologram exploded from the top, showing a galactic map within 100 light-year radius. Red dots lit up by the thousands. "What is this?" Jenthar demanded. "This," Walsh said, all pretense of frailty evaporating, "is Protocol Lazarus. 60 years of preparation, 147 hidden military installations, 82 silent shipyards in operation, 23 strategic missile platforms, and 9 complete war fleets." The council erupted in confusion. Alien voices overlapped in dozens of languages, translators struggling to keep up. "Impossible!" Jenthar roared. "We monitored your system. No large-scale military activity was detected." Walsh walked until she was directly beneath his throne. "You detected exactly what we wanted you to detect. Every installation was designed to look like inefficient mining or primitive colonization. We used your arrogance as our best disguise." She zoomed in on one of the installations. What appeared to be an asteroid mining operation revealed itself to be a fortress armed to the teeth. Each shipyard produced warships using technology we developed independently, not through reverse engineering of alien scrap, but through pure science and unprecedented global collaboration. Nexus 7 materialized beside Jenthar, processing data frantically, confirming energy anomalies at all indicated locations, signatures of multi-stage fusion, anti-magnetic containment fields, antimatter reactors, technological classification revised to Level 6.2. Dead silence. Level 6.2 placed humans only 2 levels below the Council. "A lie!" a councillor shouted. "A holographic trick." Walsh nodded. "Test it at will. Send probes. But I suggest you be quick, because in approximately 90 seconds, I will fully activate Protocol Lazarus. And then, you will have much more dramatic visual confirmation." Jenthar froze. "You are bluffing. Military activation would be a declaration of war." "No," Walsh corrected. "It would be a demonstration of defensive force. There is a crucial difference. We do not want war, Executor. We want recognition. We want respect. And we want you to understand that threats of genocide against our species will never, ever be tolerated. She raised her hand, revealing a small biometric device. This is the final authorization code. My fingerprint, my iris, my heartbeat. 3 biometric measures required for full activation. Elder Root spoke, voice heavy with urgency. Ambassador Walsh, I understand your position, but military activation will lead to inevitable conflict. The Council cannot show weakness. Institutional pride will force a response. I understand perfectly, Walsh replied. That's why I offer the third option that Captain Miller mentioned. Neither surrender nor war. Negotiation between equals. Jenthar descended from the throne for the first time in centuries, approaching Walsh. Equals, you are a single species. We are a coalition of 300 civilizations. 300 enslaved civilizations, Walsh counted. How many freely chose integration? How many were coerced under threat of extinction? The silence was answer enough. Our proposal is simple, Walsh continued. We establish formal diplomatic contact. Earth is recognized as an independent, sovereign entity. We do not join the Council, but we do not antagonize it. Free trade, cultural exchange, mutual scientific cooperation. And if we refuse? Jenthar asked, though he already knew the answer. Then we activate Lazarus. Your fleet attacks, and we find out who has better technology, better strategy, and a better will to fight. But I guarantee, Executor, even if you win, the cost will be greater than any victory in 11,000 years. Because unlike the species you subjugated, we have studied war as an art, a science, and an existential necessity throughout our history. Walsh paused, letting the weight of the words settle. You have numerical strength, but we have something you forgot during millennia of forced peace, true experience in total combat. Our tactics were tested on real battlefields, not in simulations. Our soldiers know the cost of war, and yet they will fight until their last breath. Jenthar looked at the other councillors. For the first time, he saw fear on faces that had forgotten the emotion. Time is running out, Walsh warned. 40 seconds until Protocol Lazarus enters active mode due to safety inertia. Either you accept negotiation, or we find out if the galaxy truly needs rulers who lead through terror. The Executor Prime faced an impossible choice. Retreating would demonstrate weakness that could inspire other subjugated species to rebel. But advancing could result in a war that, even if won, would destroy the Council's power structure. He looked at Walsh, truly seeing her for the first time. Not as an ambassador of a primitive species, but as a representative of a civilization that had survived horrors that would make galactic empires crumble. Counter-proposal, Jenthar finally said. We cancel the 12-hour deadline. We initiate formal negotiations. But Protocol Lazarus remains inactive as a demonstration of good faith. Walsh shook her head. No. Lazarus will be activated, but in passive defensive mode. Installations reveal themselves, but weapons remain on standby. We show real strength, but not active hostility. It was a calculated compromise. The Council would see true human power, but humanity would not attack first. Jenthar considered for long seconds. Finally, he nodded. Walsh touched the biometric device. Her fingerprint, her iris, her heartbeat. Across the galaxy in 147 locations, commands awoke. Cloaking systems shut down. Space docks opened. Fleets emerged from hibernation. In the orbit of asteroids that looked natural Metal panels retracted, revealing missile batteries. On moons that seemed deserted, hangars opened, releasing squadrons of fighters. In stations that looked like mining outposts, antimatter reactors ignited to maximum capacity. The Council watched, horrified, as sensors detected impossible energy signatures emerging from nowhere. Nexus 7 compiled data frantically. Warship count, 4,783. Tactical fighters, 22,000. Missile platforms, 8,400. Estimated combined destructive capacity exceeds the Council's complete arsenal by a ratio of 3 to 1. Genthar felt his legs weaken. 3 to 1? How? Walsh smiled without joy. Because while you governed in forced peace, we perfected the art of war. Every ship, every weapon, every tactic was developed with a single goal: to ensure we would never again be victims of tyranny. She turned to face all 12 counselors. Welcome to the new galactic reality, gentlemen. Humanity is no longer a hidden secret or a primitive species to be discarded. We are potential partners or formidable adversaries. The choice is yours. And so, under the light of thousands of newly revealed warships, the true negotiation began. The Council had just discovered that the universe had changed, and change was permanent. 3 weeks after the activation of Protocol Lazarus, the Council station had transformed into the stage for the most complex negotiations in galactic history. Delegations from dozens of species watched, fascinated and terrified, as humans redrew the political order established millennia ago. Ambassador Walsh had assembled a team of 50 negotiators, each an expert in different aspects of galactic politics. They worked 20 hours a day, sleeping in shifts, maintaining constant pressure on the Council. The strategy was brilliant, not to ask permission, but to establish fate's accomplice. Humans had already begun transmitting messages of peace to subjugated civilizations, offering protection against Council retaliation. They had already established direct trade routes, paying fair prices for resources the Council simply confiscated. Genthar watched the collapse of his authority with growing frustration. In a private meeting with loyal counselors, he declared, "They are forcing us to accept equal status through military blackmail. This cannot stand." An insectoid counselor, General Crickstar of the mantis species, clicked his mandibles in agreement. Proposal: a surgical demonstration of force. We attack an isolated human installation. We prove we are not impotent. Elder Root, always the voice of caution, swayed gravely. Fundamental error. Humans have demonstrated they do not bluff. An attack will provoke a proportional or greater response. But Genthar was desperate. His civilization had led for 11,000 years through unquestionable force, accepting equality with a species that didn't even exist when the Vorkai dominated the stars was unbearable humiliation. "Order authorized," he declared. "A tactical squadron will attack a human mining platform in a peripheral system. Silent operation, no survivors, no evidence." It was a fatal mistake. The chosen target was a mining station in the Kepler 442 system, operated by a mixed team of 40 humans and 20 aliens from species that had begun cooperating with Earth. The installation seemed vulnerable, far from the main fleets. But humans had learned in centuries of terrestrial conflict that isolated installations were always targets. Every base, every station, every outpost had defense protocols. When 10 Vorkai warships emerged from hyperspace and opened fire without warning, they met unexpected resistance. The station activated state-of-the-art shields, absorbing the initial salvos. At the same time, it transmitted an emergency signal via the human quantum network. The signal reached Earth instantly, crossed diplomatic channels in milliseconds, and arrived at Walsh's desk while she was negotiating trade treaties. She read the message, her face hardening. Without a word, she activated a direct communicator with Captain Miller, now commander of the Human Rapid Response Fleet. Captain, code red at Kepler 442. Unprovoked council attack. Green authorization for proportional response. Miller was already in motion. Understood. Rapid fleet en route for interception. ETA, 12 minutes. At the station, the installation's chief engineer, Commander Jennifer Park, coordinated a desperate defense. Redirect energy from ore processing to shields. Evacuate non-combatants to the protected core. The shields held, but each Vorkai salvo drained energy reserves. Park knew they had perhaps 5 minutes before total collapse. One of the aliens, an engineer of the Aquari species named Tide Singer, approached her. Commander Park, Aquari survival protocol suggests surrender. Preservation of life is priority. Park looked at him, then at the other terrified aliens in the command center. Many had never experienced real combat. For them, war was an abstract concept from ancient stories. Tide Singer, she said firmly, humans have a different saying. We prefer to die on our feet than live on our knees. But you and the others have a choice. You can evacuate in escape pods. Tide Singer made a gesture his species used to indicate confusion. You remain? I remain. This station has 40 humans and 20 members of other species. My duty is to protect everyone, including you. It was a moment of revelation for the aliens present. They had seen council propaganda describing humans as violent and selfish. But here was a human commander offering personal sacrifice to save aliens she barely knew. Tide Singer made a decision that would change his species' history. Aquari remain. We share the destiny. Other aliens echoed the sentiment. If humans would fight to the death to protect them, they would not abandon the humans. Park felt a lump in her throat, but had no time for emotion. Then let's buy every second possible. Redirect all non-essential systems to shields. Prepare electronic countermeasures. The Vorkai ships intensified their attack, frustrated by the unexpected resistance. General Krickstar, leading the squadron, transmitted to his crew annihilation protocol. Concentrate all arsenal on a single point of the shield. Break their defenses. That's when Miller arrived. The Human Rapid Response Fleet consisted of 12 state-of-the-art destroyers, designed specifically for extreme mobility and disproportionate firepower. They emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, positioning themselves between the Vorkai ships and the damaged station. Miller opened a communication channel. Attention, Vorkai ships. You have attacked a civilian installation in direct violation of negotiation terms. Cease fire immediately and retreat or face destruction. Krickstar, caught between Genthar's orders and the local human numerical superiority, hesitated. 10 ships against 12. Technically, he still had an advantage. Humans are bluffing, he transmitted to his fleet. They won't risk total war for a minor installation. Continue the attack. It was the last mistake he made. Miller didn't wait for a second chance. All units, weapons free, engage. The ensuing space battle was a masterpiece of lethal precision. Human destroyers did not waste ammunition on dramatic salvos. Every shot was calculated, aimed at specific weak points in the Vorkai shields. Missiles guided by advanced AI evaded alien countermeasures. Accelerated particle beams cut through propulsion systems. In 90 seconds, 3 Vorkai ships were adrift, engines destroyed. Krikstar tried to retreat, but Miller had positioned his fleet to block escape routes. Negative, General. You attacked civilians. There will be no clean withdrawal. One of the Vorkai ships, desperate, attempted a kamikaze maneuver toward the station. The destroyer commanded by Sarah Jenkins intercepted, placing itself directly in the trajectory. The collision never happened. Jenkins destroyed the alien ship with an antimatter blast at the last possible second. In 5 minutes, the battle was over. 7 Vorkai ships were destroyed. 3 survivors were captured by tractor beams, disarmed and defenseless. But the victory came at a cost. 2 human destroyers had suffered severe damage, and 23 human crew members were injured. Miller contacted the station. Commander Park, status? Shields at 5%, but structure intact, 0 fatal casualties, all crew members, human and alien, safe. Miller felt an immense weight leave his shoulders. Well done, Commander. Medical aid is en route. He then opened a channel to the captured ships. General Krikstar, your crew will be treated according to the Geneva Conventions. Human codes of war. Prisoners receive medical treatment, adequate food, and basic respect. When ready for transfer, they will be returned to the Council. Krikstar, injured but alive, could barely believe it. You won't execute us? Executing prisoners would violate our own principles, Miller replied. We fight when necessary, but we are not monsters. That distinguishes us from those who rule. Through terror. The transmission was intercepted by dozens of species across the galaxy. The contrast was stark. The Council attacked civilians without provocation. Humans defended, won, and treated defeated enemies with compassion. At the Council station, Ambassador Walsh publicly confronted Genthar before all the gathered delegations. Executor Prime, your forces attacked a civilian installation, nearly killing 60 innocents. This was a deliberate violation of our preliminary agreements. Genthar attempted a defense. Unauthorized action, General Krikstar acted independently. Walsh did not accept it. A lie? We intercepted your encrypted communications. You ordered the attack. And now, before the entire galaxy, I issue an ultimatum. The Council recognizes humanity as a sovereign entity, with all rights and protections, or we declare that negotiations have failed. Elder Root, always the mediator, intervened. Ambassador Walsh, I understand your indignation, but a declaration of war would only serve to... Not war, Walsh interrupted. Separation. Humanity and allied species will establish our own political union. We will leave the Council to its decaying sphere of influence. It was a more effective threat than any arsenal. Dozens of species had already expressed interest in joining humanity. If Walsh formalized an alternative union, the Council would lose not only authority, but legitimacy. Genthar faced an impossible choice for the second time in 3 weeks. But now, with evidence of his betrayal exposed, he had no political capital to resist. The Council, he said, each word painful, recognizes Earth and human territories as an independent sovereign entity. Formal diplomatic relations will be established. Walsh nodded. Accepted. But there is an additional condition. General Crickstar and officers responsible for the attack will be tried by an independent tribunal composed of representatives from multiple species. It was a revolutionary precedent. For the first time, council members would answer for war crimes. Genthar had no choice but to agree. As the delegations dispersed, Elder Root approached Walsh privately. "You played dangerously," the ancient tree said. "It could have resulted in total war." Walsh smiled tiredly. "Wars are won before the first shot, Elder Root. Today's victory was achieved through demonstrating that we have the strength to fight and the character to win with honor. The Council governs through fear. We lead through example." Elder Root swayed, deep understanding in its ancient gaze. "Your species may be young, Ambassador, but your wisdom was forged in furnaces of suffering that our civilization never knew. Perhaps the galaxy needs that perspective." Walsh looked out the observation window, seeing countless stars blinking in the void. "Perhaps," she agreed. "Or perhaps we need each other." And for the first time in 11,000 years, the galaxy began to glimpse a future built not on a hierarchy of power, but on the cooperation of equals. The change was slow, painful, but inevitable, and humanity, a species that had survived its own apocalypse, was ready to ensure that the change was permanent. 6 months after the Kepler 442 incident, the galaxy was unrecognizably different. What had been a monolithic order under the Council had fragmented into a complex web of alliances, pacts, and negotiations. Earth had established the Alliance of Free Worlds, a voluntary coalition of 47 civilizations that chose partnership based on mutual respect rather than forced subjugation. The contrast with the Council was deliberate and absolute. Ambassador Walsh oversaw the operations of the Alliance's new headquarters, a space station called Horizon, built in neutral space between human territory and the Council zone. It was a hybrid structure, combining the architecture of dozens of species, symbolizing the Alliance's core philosophy: diversity as strength. On that specific morning, Walsh was meeting with a delegation of refugees from the Sylphan species, ethereal beings of crystallized energy who had served the Council as communication specialists for 2,000 years. The Sylphan spokesperson, who identified herself as Crystal Harmony, floated nervously before Walsh. "Ambassador, our people wish to join the Alliance, but we fear retaliation from the Council." Walsh studied the documentation provided by the Sylphan. They were a naturally pacifist species with no significant military capability, exactly the type of civilization the Council ruthlessly exploited. "Harmony, the Alliance protects its members. But I need to be clear. Our protection comes with responsibilities. We expect participation in democratic decisions, fair economic contribution, and, when possible, support in collective defense." The Sylphan pulsed with colors of concern. "Our people have never fought. Violence is contrary to our essence." "I understand," Walsh replied gently, "and we will never demand that you violate your principles. But there are ways to contribute to defense without direct violence. Communications, medical support, logistics. War is not just combat. It is a complex cooperation of hundreds of functions." Crystal Harmony considered, then pulsed with colors of acceptance. "We offer our communication technology. It is superior to most galactic species. It can improve the Alliance's coordination." Walsh smiled. "I accept with gratitude. Welcome to the family, Harmony." It was a scene that repeated weekly. Species tired of tyranny sought an alternative, and humanity, with only decades of galactic presence, had become a beacon of hope. But not everything was harmonious. In a distant sector, fragments loyal to the old Council regime were consolidating forces. Led by Admiral Zarthon, a member of the same species as Genthar, they rejected any accommodation with humans. Zarthon met clandestinely with military commanders from 5 species who still believed in superiority through force. His operational base was an abandoned station in an ionized nebula, impossible to detect through conventional sensors. Humans are a plague, Zarthon declared to his allies. They infect the galaxy with dangerous concepts: equality, democracy, choice. These ideas weaken the natural order. The strong must govern the weak. It has always been this way. An insectoid general from a species called the Arachnae clicked agreement. Proposal: a coordinated attack on multiple Alliance targets simultaneously. Demonstrate that human protection is an illusion. Zarthon nodded. Precisely, but we will not attack military installations. We will attack an emotional symbol, something that will break the spirit of this so-called alliance. He projected a hologram of the Horizon Station, the Alliance headquarters, where representatives of dozens of species work together. Destroy it, and the message will be clear. Cooperation leads only to death. Fear is more reliable than hope. It was a brutal plan in its simplicity, and in secret, Zarthon had already gathered a fleet of 200 ships, combining loyal Council remnants with mercenaries and pirates. Meanwhile, on Earth, Captain Miller supervised joint training between human and alien forces. It was an audacious experiment, creating truly integrated military units, combining the strengths of multiple species. One of the exercises involved a mixed team, responding to a simulated pirate attack. Human soldiers worked side by side with warriors of the Kryn species. Reptilian humanoids with physical strength 3 times greater than humans, but slower reflexes. Observing the exercise, Miller spoke with General Tormak, leader of the Kryn forces. "Your warriors are impressive," Miller commented, watching a Kryn knock down an armored door with a single blow. Tormak growled with satisfaction. "Strength is the gift of our species, but I observe that human soldiers compensate with speed and tactics. Combined, we are more effective." "Exactly the principle," Miller agreed. "Alone, we have limitations. Together, those limitations become complementary." He was interrupted by a maximum priority alert. An intelligence officer, Lieutenant Marcus Okonkwo, ran up to Miller with a tablet showing intercepted data. "Captain, we just decrypted suspicious communications. There is unauthorized fleet movement in Sector 17. The pattern suggests mobilization for an attack." Miller studied the data, his military instinct setting off alarms. "Fleet size? Preliminary estimate, 200 ships, mixed composition, including line units from the old Council. 200 ships don't move without a significant target." Miller thought aloud. Then he realized, "Horizon. They're going to attack the station." Tormak growled menacingly. "My species has warriors stationed at Horizon, also families of Kryn diplomats. If they attack, they won't get a chance," Miller guaranteed, already activating emergency protocols. "General alert. Full mobilization of the Allied Defense Fleet. Interception route for Horizon." An urgent message was transmitted via the quantum network to Walsh at Horizon. She received it while mediating a trade dispute between two allied species. Reading the alert, her face hardened. Immediate evacuation of non-essential personnel, activation of station defenses, and someone find Dr. Ivanov. We need her tactical expertise. Natasha Ivanov was on the lower levels of Horizon, supervising the installation of new shield systems developed in collaboration between human and Sylphan engineers. When she received the summons, she ran up to the command center. "Situation?" she asked. Upon entering, Walsh showed a tactical projection. "Hostile fleet, 200 ships, ETA 3 hours. Horizon has defensive armament, but it was not designed to withstand a large-scale assault." Ivanov analyzed quickly. "How long until our defense fleet can arrive?" 2 hours and 40 minutes, Walsh replied. 20 minutes before the attack. "Tight margin," Ivanov murmured, "but workable. I recommend evacuating civilians to transport ships. We keep only essential military personnel and technicians." Walsh nodded. "Approved. But there is an additional complication." She zoomed in on a sector near the station. 3 civilian cargo ships transporting refugees from a species persecuted by the Council were only 2 hours away from Horizon. If we retreat and leave Horizon, those ships are exposed. They were our promised escort. Ivanov understood the dilemma. Abandoning refugees contradicted the Alliance's fundamental values, but defending the station against a superior force risked everything. "There is no easy choice," she finally said, "but we have principles. We defend both Horizon and the refugees." Walsh smiled, pride shining in her eyes. "I agree completely. Prepare defenses. We will show these remnants that the Alliance abandons no one." When Miller's fleet arrived in the system 2 hours later, they found Horizon in full battle configuration. The station had extended additional shield panels, repositioned weapon batteries, and evacuated all civilians to transport ships waiting, protected, behind an asteroid field. Miller assumed tactical command. "Status of all units?" The communications officer replied. "Allied fleet. 120 ships, mixed composition of 6 different species. Horizon is fortified. Refugee freighters have reached the protected zone." Positioning of the hostile fleet? Emerging from hyperspace in 15 minutes, we confirmed 213 ships under the command of Admiral Zathon. Miller opened a channel to the entire fleet. "Attention, all Allied units. The enemy comes to destroy not just a station, but an idea. They believe that fear is stronger than hope, that tyranny is more stable than freedom. Today, we prove them wrong." Responses arrived in dozens of languages, all conveying the same sentiment: absolute determination. When Zathon's fleet emerged from hyperspace in attack formation, they found not terrified victims, but an organized and ready defensive force. Zathon opened a communication channel, his voice filled with contempt. "Foolish humans and your alien pets, you are outnumbered almost 2 to 1. Surrender now, and perhaps we will allow evacuation." Miller responded with unshakable calm. "Admiral Zathon, you have made a fundamental mistake. You counted ships, but you didn't understand what moves us. Every crew member on these 120 ships chose to be here, chose to defend something greater than themselves. Your fleet fights out of hatred and fear. Ours fights for a better future." Zathon cut the communication with a frustrated snarl. "All units, attack. Destroy the station first, then hunt the remnants of the fleet." The battle for the future of the Alliance was about to begin. and the result would determine not only the fate of Horizon, but whether the galaxy would embrace cooperation or return to tyranny. In Horizon's command center, Walsh watched the enemy formations advance. "May history remember us," she murmured, "not just how we fought, but why we fought." And then, space exploded in fire and light. Zathon's first salvo was devastating. 100 ships concentrated fire on Horizon's south sector, testing the resistance of the newly installed shields. The Sylphan technology proved its worth, dispersing the attack energy through a crystalline matrix that distributed the impact evenly. But Walsh knew that the shields would not hold indefinitely against superior numerical force. "Ivanov, how much time do we have?" she asked. Dr. Ivanov analyzed the data frantically. "With the current attack pattern, shields will fail in 20 minutes. We need to reduce pressure or find a way to balance the numbers." In the fleet, Captain Miller coordinated the response. Squadron Alpha, flanking maneuver, forced them to divide their focus. Squadron Beta, protect the refugee freighters. Squadron Gamma, with me. We're going straight to the center of the enemy formation. It was a risky tactic, but based on a human principle tested in 1,000 terrestrial battles. If you can't win by numbers, win by audacity. General Tormak, commanding 3 Kryn cruisers, roared approval over the open channel. "Kryn warriors follow the humans. Glory in battle." The Kryn cruisers, massive and heavily armored, advanced in a wedge formation, absorbing enemy fire, while human ships, smaller and more agile, fired from blind spots. Zathon watched with growing frustration. His numerical superiority was being neutralized by superior tactics. "Change focus. Ignore the station temporarily. Destroy the fleet first." It was a fatal tactical error. By dispersing fire, Zathon reduced pressure on Horizon, allowing the shields to recover. Walsh seized the opportunity. "Ivanov, activate the station's offensive. Batteries, targets of opportunity. Show them that Horizon is not just a passive target." Accelerated particle cannons emerged from hidden docks on the station. They were not weapons of mass destruction, but precise and lethal. 3 enemy ships that approached too closely were disabled in quick succession. In the battle, a pattern emerged. Each alliance species contributed its unique strengths. Sylphan ships provided perfect communications, allowing flawless coordination. Kryn warriors absorbed impossible punishment with reinforced shields. Human fighters executed maneuvers that defied physics. Pilots trained in high gravity, enduring accelerations that would kill other species, and smaller species, those without direct military capability. Crewed hospital ships that rescued survivors from both sides, demonstrating that the Alliance valued life even in the midst of combat. It was this last detail that began to erode the morale of Zathon's fleet. Mercenaries realized that if defeated, the Alliance would treat them with compassion. Loyal remnants began to question whether they were fighting for a just cause or just wounded pride. But Zathon, blinded by ideology, refused to see reality. Final attack. All ships, full charge on Horizon. Destroy it, no matter the cost. 200 ships, even with suffered casualties, still represented an overwhelming force. They converged on Horizon in a battering ram formation, determined to break the shields through sheer volume of fire. Ivanov saw the calculations. "Ambassador, they're going to make it. Shields won't withstand the concentrated impact of the entire fleet." Walsh closed her eyes for a moment. Then she activated the communicator. "Captain Miller, Horizon is about to fall. Emergency evacuation of remaining personnel. Miller responded, his voice tense. Negative, Ambassador. There is an alternative. Explain. The Resolute is in Horizon's hangar, still equipped with the systems we used for the initial infiltration of the Council. I can take the ship to the center of the enemy formation and detonate the antimatter reactors. The explosion will completely disorganize the attack. Dead silence on the channel. Walsh immediately understood what Miller was proposing. Sacrifice. The same ship that started everything, used in a final act of protection. Captain, that is a suicide mission. Yes, ma'am. But it will save thousands, and it will definitively prove that the Alliance values every life, even mine. Sarah Chen, hearing the conversation from engineering, cut into the channel. No, John. There's another way. We can... Sarah? Miller interrupted gently. You know there isn't. And you know I would do this even if there were. It's my duty, my privilege. Chen felt tears burning, but she was an engineer. Rationality overcame emotion. Then at least let me calculate the optimal approach route. If you're going to do this, we'll do it right. In the next 5 minutes, while the enemy fleet advanced inexorably, the small team on the Resolute prepared for their final flight. Miller recorded a final message for wide transmission. To all civilizations observing this battle, my name is John Miller, captain of the Starship Resolute, representative of Earth. In moments, I will prove something my species learned through painful history, that the greatest strength comes not from weapons or numbers, but from the willingness to sacrifice everything for what we believe in. He paused, looking around the empty bridge. The crew had evacuated. He was alone with the ship that had become an extension of himself during the mission to the Council. If the Alliance means anything, it means the strong protect the weak. That life has value beyond utility, that the future is worth fighting and dying to defend. The Resolute left Horizon, small and seemingly insignificant compared to the massive warships converging for the final attack. Zarthon saw the ship on the scanner and laughed. The pathetic primitive vessel tries to bluff again? Destroy it. 3 ships diverted to intercept. Miller activated every ounce of power from the engines, executing a sequence of evasive maneuvers that Chen had programmed. The Resolute danced between energy blasts, taking advantage of its small size and superior agility. And then, when he was just 2 miles from the center of the enemy formation, Miller sent a final signal. Earth, this is Resolute. Mission accomplished. Tell my daughter her dad loves her, and that I fought for a future where she will never have to live in fear. He initiated the reactor overload. Walsh, tears streaming freely, transmitted to the entire Allied fleet. All units, retreat immediately. Minimum distance, 15 kilometers. The fleet obeyed instantly, absolute trust in the command. Zarthon, finally realizing what was happening, tried to order dispersion, but it was too late. His ships were too concentrated, the directional impulse too strong. The Resolute exploded. It was no ordinary explosion. It was a controlled detonation of 3 antimatter reactors, releasing energy equivalent to a small supernova. A plasma ball expanded at relativistic speeds, engulfing everything within a 6-mile radius. 60 enemy ships were instantly vaporized. Another 80 suffered catastrophic damage. Zarthon's perfectly coordinated formation disintegrated into absolute chaos. In the shockwave, Zarthon's command ship spun out of control, systems failing in a cascade. He watched, horrified, as his superior fleet was destroyed not by superior military force, but by individual sacrifice. Walsh did not waste a moment. All units, advance. As you remember, Captain Miller's sacrifice, show the enemy that he did not die in vain. The Allied fleet charged against the disorganized enemy ships, but they did not seek a massacre. They targeted propulsion systems, disabling but preserving lives. The message was clear. The Alliance had the power to destroy completely, but chose compassion. In 30 minutes, the battle was over. 93 enemy ships captured, 40 destroyed. The rest fled into hyperspace. Zarthon, trapped in a disabled ship, was brought aboard Horizon. Walsh faced him personally, not with hatred, but with sadness. Admiral, you fought to preserve an order based on fear and domination, and you lost. Not because we were stronger, but because we fought for something worth more than power. The dignity of choice. Zarthon, defeated, but not broken, growled, "You won a battle. You haven't changed the nature of the universe. The strong will always dominate the weak." "No," Walsh corrected softly, "the strong can choose to protect the weak. And that choice, Admiral, is what distinguishes us from tyrants." 3 weeks after the Battle of Horizon, as it became known, a memorial ceremony was held at the rebuilt station. Representatives from all 100 species of the Alliance, now expanded after the moral victory, attended. A monument was erected in the center of Horizon, a sculpture of the Resolute, surrounded by the names of all who died defending the ideal of cooperative freedom. Miller's daughter, a young 12-year-old cadet named Emma, was invited to unveil the memorial. With a firm voice, despite her tears, she read her father's final letter. "Emma, if you are reading this, it means I made a difficult choice, but I want you to know that it was not a choice of despair, but of hope. I fought so that you and children from 100 different worlds could grow up without fear, so that tomorrow would be better than today. And if my life bought that future, it was a price I paid with joy." There was not a dry eye in the audience, alien or human. Elder Root, now officially allied with humanity after renouncing the Council, spoke. John Miller taught the galaxy a lesson that millennia-old civilizations had forgotten. True strength is not in dominating others, but in lifting each other up. His death was not an end, but the seed of a new era. In the following months, the Alliance grew exponentially. Species that observed the Battle of Horizon clearly saw the contrast. The Council attacked first and treated prisoners brutally. The Alliance defended itself, won with honor, and treated defeated enemies with compassion. The Council itself, weakened by massive defections, was forced into fundamental reforms. Genthar resigned. The hierarchical structure was replaced by a more democratic assembly. Humans refused requests to assume galactic leadership. "We did not come to dominate," Walsh explained in a final speech before retiring. "We came to contribute. Every species has unique wisdom. Our task is not to lead, but to collaborate." The Galactic Confederation was established, a truly voluntary union of free civilizations. Humans, despite being one of the youngest species, were invited to the founding council due to their demonstration of moral leadership. On Earth, the night of the final approval of the Confederation statutes, millions gathered in public squares to celebrate. Not a military victory, but a victory of ideals. Sarah Chen, now Admiral of the Allied Engineering Fleet, watched the celebrations from an office on the moon. Next to her was a tablet showing Miller's last message. "We did it, John," she whispered to the empty screen. "We didn't just survive, we thrived, and we brought the galaxy with us." Above her, through the observation window, Earth shone blue and white. A small point of light in an infinite universe, but a point that against all odds had illuminated the galactic darkness with hope. Humanity had proven that they were not just stubborn survivors or fierce warriors, they were bridge builders, dreamers of better futures, defenders of principles worth more than power. And the galaxy, observing a species that survived its own apocalypse and emerged not embittered but compassionate, not hardened but hopeful, learned a fundamental lesson. True strength does not come from how much damage you can inflict. It comes from how much you are willing to sacrifice to protect what you love. And by that standard, humanity was stronger than any empire that had ever dominated the stars. Because while empires fall, ideals endure. And the ideal of freedom, dignity, and cooperation among equals, that ideal bought with blood and sacrifice, would illuminate the galaxy for millennia. The dawn did not belong only to humanity. It belonged to everyone. End of story. If humanity's tenacity in the face of the impossible inspired you, if the courage to fight, not for domination, but for freedom, touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more Chronicles of the Stars. Because the galaxy is full of stories waiting to be told, and humanity's greatest adventure is just beginning. See you among the stars, explorers.